Welcome to the absolutely massive 2024 Silverado EV RST. Everything about this truck is massive. The interior space is massive. The weight is massive. The wheels are massive. Everything is huge about this truck. But in today's video, we're going to be taking you on our full build quality analysis, walking around the exterior, seeing how things fit together to see if it really justifies quite an expensive price point on this vehicle. We're also going to jump inside, talk about the interior materials, see how everything feels, get an overall feel for this vehicle because this thing is almost touching $100,000. Now there's a lot behind that, over 200 kilowatt hour battery pack under here, but I do have to say, Chevy really dropped the ball on this car. This should not be the Silverado. This should be the Avalanche. It really should be, with the styling going back to the Avalanche that we used to have years and years ago. Now understand with this video, these videos do get very long and very nitpicky. If you're not into panel gaps and fit and finish, here's your disclaimer. Don't watch the video. This is going to be a long one, so I'll chapterize this so you guys can skip around, skip over things you don't really care about and get to the meat and potatoes, if you will. This is also a press vehicle directly from Chevy, so do understand that what you're seeing here may not be representative to what you pick up if you were to purchase one of these. But let's jump into this. Now, before we jump into this video, I want to run through the pricing here. Now, as you see up here, 2024 Silverado EV RST should have been named the Avalanche, and this with destination is $96,710. Now, that may seem like a lot of money, but in terms of what this really competes against, Tesla Cybertruck, Rivian R1T, Hummer EV, Sierra EV, honestly, this is a little bit of a sweet spot. You have just so much content in this thing, fully maxed out. This is the highest trim level you can get on the Silverado EV. To put this into context, I recently just did a video with a build quality analysis on a brand new Gen 2 Rivian R1T, which was a dual motor, not even their top motor, with the biggest battery pack they offer, and that thing was over $97,000. So technically, you can get this 200 plus kilowatt hour behemoth of a truck for cheaper than a dual motor max pack. So without further ado, let's jump into exterior fit and finish. I'm truly surprised I can fit this massive truck on 1X on the iPhone 16 Pro here. This thing is just huge. Everything is huge about it. I mean, just starting off here, looking at these wheels, these are a 275/50 24-inch wheel. In all honesty, okay, they do look big in person, but you look at it, you're like, I don't know, it doesn't look like a 24. I mean, this thing is just so beefy. In all honesty, I don't really know where to start here on the fit and finish. It just feels like this truck goes on for days. So this could be quite a long video, but I guess we'll start up here on the front hood. So what I want to look at here is just start coming in here and looking at all of these tolerances throughout. So far looking here, this lines up pretty good. Moving down the back here, not looking too shabby at all. Now, this little tool here is basically a millimeter measurement tool, so I can more quantitatively show you the numbers in here. So this is right about 3.5 millimeters, and that's about 3.75. So that's looking pretty darn good there. Now, ideally, I like to see tolerances pretty close, but not to the point of them literally touching another panel. Rivian R1T, yeah, having massive issues with that on Rivian. So that, in my opinion, is why these build quality videos are important. You literally don't want to go pick up a near $100,000+ truck, open a door, and it's contacting a front fender, having to either touch up paint on that, get it resprayed, or completely deny it. That's just an annoyance. So let's check this side over here. I can tell you these gaps are definitely a lot bigger. 6 millimeters over here, and down here looking about 4.5 or so. You also notice this hood is a little bit farther down. This doesn't line up completely perfectly there. Now this is what we're going to be doing this whole video, so stay tuned for this. I'm really anxious to see what this is actually looking like. Now I just did this truck's very younger brothers, if you will, the Blazer EV, Equinox EV, and my impression was actually both of those were screwed together quite well. Interior materials really let the vehicle down for me in terms of just feeling very cheap, very plasticky, so I'm anxious to see if that's the case here. Now, let's open up this front trunk. Yes, it does have a front trunk. There's a little hidden button in this one right here. It's very slow to open. Nice smooth actuation throughout, but honestly you have a reasonable amount of space here. Now let's compare this to the other front trunks in the electric truck segment. Compared to F-150 Lightning, a little bit smaller. Compared to Cybertruck, this is a massive front trunk and way more usable. Now Rivian R1T, I would say, is a different shape, and I realistically do think there is more cubic foot storage in a Rivian. But the nice thing here is you basically have this front grille section removed and up here in the hood, whereas the Rivian, you have to basically pull all your stuff over because this is all closed off. So I think this is substantially more usable. Now let's quickly close this down. We do have a 110 outlet here, which is nice to have up front. Coming down, that massive front trunk clicks down, very nice. Now on the front end here, we have very distinctive styling here going on with the illuminated Chevy badge, this light bar that goes all the way through, and of course our headlights down here. We're seeing more and more manufacturers move to this to have your DRLs up here, headlights lower. I believe that to be probably just a regulation thing. Now looking here at the tolerances in basically this DRL light, I'm gonna say this looks quite tight here. It opens up here, really opens up here, but you can see it's very tight down here. So I'm going to quantitate that for you. That's about 5.25, and that is well under 3 millimeters, almost to the point of that could maybe start touching. Do like this illuminated Chevy badge there. That looks pretty cool. Let's check these out. So that is right about 6.5, maybe slightly more. Whoa. That one kept going, so that's about 6 there. Now you'll notice this doesn't fit perfectly smooth in there, so would like to see those tolerances slightly lined up a little bit more. But same thing going on over here, quite a large gap here, very tight down here. Now what I always like to look at as well is bumper to fender tolerances. Some companies do this extremely well. Other companies really struggle with this area. And honestly, this looks reasonably okay. The only thing I'm going to complain about here, this bumper's sticking out a little bit. So you can see there's some play in there. If I push on it pretty darn good, it really makes that line up a lot better. Now let's look at the driver's side here, see if the same is going on. No, this side looks way better for sure. So glad to see that. So I would say so far here, a few things slightly off to me. The front trunk area definitely needs some fine tuning. Definitely don't feel like these lights are fitting absolutely perfect. This side feels a lot better than this side, as you can see that huge gap sticking out there. So again, the whole thing with this is you have a $100,000+ vehicle, kind of expect this thing to be near perfection, and already, even on a press vehicle, not finding that to be absolutely the case. But let's continue moving on. So here, lower front bumper, lots of stuff going on, of course. I just want to check this out. This looks fantastic all the way around. Of course, lots of park distance controls here, have them very nicely hidden in the grille. Front camera there, and this is the one to open your front trunk. Moving on to this side, this looks fantastic all the way through, so that's great. Really no complaints with basically the front bumper. I would say my biggest issue here is front trunk area. So let's continue on to the side fender. One thing I really want to make sure is that we're not taking paint off of our fender from our door touching it. Rivian, that's just, it still really bugs me that that happens. Nope, these open perfect because they have proper tolerances on here. So let's take a quick little measurement here, about 3.5. Down here, a little over 4, so not perfect. Honestly, looking at it though, this looks pretty flush all the way through, so I have no real complaints there. You can see these are all plastic components here, where this is metal. This all looks fantastic going all the way down. Even this, another plastic piece. Look at the gapping there. Spot on. Really like to see that. Now I will say, I don't know if you can see it, this door definitely sticks out right there. I don't know if that's a design intention. Let's quickly jump over here to the passenger side and see if it is the same over here. It is. So that may be design intent. Does look a little goofy to me. Definitely stands out in my eyes. We're going to continue down the driver's side here, and look at the size of this freaking mirror. I mean, holy smokes. Everything on this truck, I hope it comes through on camera how big this thing is. Like, you really need to go check it out in person. Now, I will say, so we actually used to own a GMC 2500 HD AT4. It made this thing feel truly small. Genuinely, the hood was up to my shoulder, where this comes about to mid chest or so. So honestly, this thing, although it is big, it's not as big as some of its diesel counterparts, which is pretty darn insane. Now here in the mirror housing, looks like we have some 360 cams. In all honesty, have to say, been pretty darn impressed with GM's suite of cameras on these. They actually seem pretty darn decent quality. We'll talk a little bit more about that once we jump inside. But let's continue moving down here. Tolerances all looking amazing throughout here. Look at this B-pillar. This is perfection. Look at that. Perfect tolerances all the way down. This is looking pretty good. If I have to say ever so slight nitpick, this door is kind of a little bit sitting up, but I think they've kind of masked that with this being perfect. Now, again, a lot of these press cars, guys, actually go through exactly what I'm doing now. So they'll take them off the assembly line, they'll go through, they'll shim everything, and they'll actually move the doors around to get them perfect. That happens a lot, but as you can see, there's some areas that are still not perfect here. But this whole intention is to give you things to look out for if you're going to purchase a $100,000 truck, and ideally just compare this between other competitors in the electric market. Now here we have no fuss, no mess door handles. These are the same thing that you get on any sort of 1500, 2500, 3500. Pretty great keyless entry system here. Boom, lock the truck. You can see the mirrors fold in here. Boom, unlock it, good to go. These feel fantastic, and holy smokes, are these doors heavy. Wow, that's a lot of door. It is truly massive, to say the least. Great thunk on there. Love to hear that. That felt fantastic. Feels very premium, very solid. Now, one thing you'll notice down here, I'm not sure if this is an option to basically have these running boards. I think this truck would look extremely weird without it. Now you can see basically this is where the floor sits, and then there to down there, that's all that massive battery pack. I think without these running boards, it would look very goofy. And you can definitely tell they have all the spaces basically going into the side. So definitely think you need those on here. Let's move back here to the back door. Check out all of these tolerances. Looking pretty darn good, to say the least. I mean, the doors fit flush. There's no real hard body lines here, which I do think is kind of a benefit when you're looking at exterior fit and finish. Like if you have hard body lines here, here, all the way down the door, and they don't line up perfectly, they really stick out and your eye is immediately drawn to those. You do have one down here, and honestly, perfection there. Looking very, very good. This is the whole area back here where you kind of get the Avalanche feel, or the Chevy Avalanche that came out years and years ago, of course, with this kind of rake as you come down here. It's an interesting design. I'm assuming that they did that for aero purposes to kind of control all the air coming around here into the rear end. But yeah, I gotta say, as design wise, I still think Sierra EV looks slightly better in terms of just overall kind of looks. I don't know, some people may prefer Silverado, have to have a Chevy, totally understand that. Moving down the side here, tolerances, dang, perfection there. That is amazing. All the way around here, plastics fitting fantastic. Even down here, you can see these are two separate pieces, fantastic. This whole rear bumper section, fantastic. Dang, Chevy, dang, this looks fantastic. No complaints from me on that. Now back here, of course, you can see this absolutely massive piece as well. Everything just being huge on this. This is your charge port. It is in the right location. As I always say, I really personally, especially with electric vehicles, always like having it on the driver's side rear light. And the reason being is, well, they're easy to use with superchargers, number one, but you know, I have two Kia vehicles, an EV9 and an EV6. I also have a Tesla Model 3, and charge port in Tesla is back here. On the EV6 and EV9, they're on the passenger side. Can't tell you how many times I get in the car because I walk by the driver's side, get in, and the charge cable is still connected. So I have to get back out, go all the way around the garage. This to me is the proper location. Interface as well with V3 superchargers. And of course, you do have access to use those with Chevy and GM here. So all looking good there. Big charge port throughout here. I do want to look here. Yeah, this is terrible. What is this? What are you supposed to do with that? Does this hang anywhere here? No, it definitely doesn't. Not like a gas hook. So this, of course, is just to basically protect your DC pins while you're AC charging, but this just feels absolutely terrible. Same exact one that is on Blazer and Equinox. Here's the funny thing. You can't put this over without it kind of getting this strap underneath here. So if it were me, I would give it, bam, one of those, take that stupid cord off and just stop fiddling with that. But like that this is just a normal charge port here. It's not power operated. It's not something that's going to break. So I do think that's great. Have very large distinctive taillights here. They have this very cool frosted look to them. You can also see some really unique design elements in it. Man, I think they look very nice, very well placed, and very big for this truck, in all honesty. I think they look pretty darn nice. Moving along here, we have, you know, our bedside with the plastic. This is looking pretty good. I can see this area here not perfectly flush. Everything else is flush up here. So this one area, I don't know if it's some clips that need to move in, but you can see all of this is very tight back here, except for that one little area. So let's move. Now this tailgate, when it originally came out, gosh, I don't know, it had to be 5-6 years ago at this point now, this multi-step tailgate. We all thought it was one of the dumbest things out there. I actually remember my uncle at the time was like, I'm never getting one of these new trucks with that stupid tailgate on it. But boy, were we all wrong. This thing was actually so useful. My dad's 2500 AT4 had the same tailgate. It is extremely useful. The great part here, of course, it's multi-function. So if I want to pop this out, I can pop this bad boy up and boom, you can store some more stuff in there. This being kind of a catch latch for it. Close that down. I will say those bad boys are quite heavy. Now the real trick here is to do that and then that. Boom, that folds down. And then you have your step here, and it makes it so much easier for entering the bed. Now one thing that's interesting, I don't know if it's particularly on this truck, if it's missing it, but there is a place for a handle here. So basically you slide out this handle, boom, you have something to grab on. So I don't know, that seems a little interesting. I know you can actually get like speakers back here. There's a whole host of accessories for GM products. Now to fold this bad boy up, close that, close that. Gotta say that all feels pretty good, and this is extremely useful. I think you use this a lot more than you initially think you will. Now, looking at the fit and finish back here, gotta say all of this really nice throughout. Looks very even. I will say this piece of plastic up here not fitting absolutely perfect. Those are just quick replacement pieces because these get absolutely destroyed if you actually use your truck loading up lumber, plywood, whatever it may be. Now I will say this gap looks pretty big here, folks, and that is, let's go at the very tippity top, 9 millimeters there. Then you can see down here, it's more in the 5.5 region. Check that on this particular side. Yeah, that's about 8 there, and just about 4.5 there. So a little off. I'm really surprised here because it seems like, okay, front trunk area, rear tailgate, not perfectly aligned, but dang, down the side on the doors, all of this trim's very good. who was working on the front and back of this thing, because it definitely needs a little bit of love. Now you can see here, you have a little step in here, which is very useful, accessing things in the rear bed. Lots of park distance sensors back here. You of course have all of your trailer hitch stuff here, all great for towing. Now I am surprised, I do believe both Rivian and Cybertruck tow more than this. I don't know. Let me know if that's true, but I was surprised by how little this actually can tow. And I think that's because of how massively heavy this thing is, that you can't basically tow as much with it. I think it's only around 10,000 pounds or so. That's pretty interesting to me. One thing I do want to talk about here that I completely forgot about. Let's pop this open. Can we open up this tonneau cover? May have to do it with this up. Wow, that is heavy. That is seriously no joke. Now, this tonneau cover, nowhere near as nice as Cybertruck's, and I would arguably say it's nowhere near as nice as Rivian's, but this is not going to break quite as easily. But you can also see, like, this kind of stuff, this seems very cheap. Now, in truck land, for most of you EV owners with your first trucks, normally you don't really get a tonneau cover from the factory with your truck. Normally you get them from a second party after the fact, but this is a pretty interesting design, I will say. So it's of course just got some Velcro here. Boom, you can just roll this all the way up, and then you can actually take this out once you get all the way to the back. So it does work pretty easy. It's a little weird to say the least. It just doesn't feel that premium. And if you have anything back here that's of value, I mean, stabbing a knife through this, ripping it open, pretty darn easy compared to something like Rivian or Cybertruck. That's not really a concern there. So back here, we do have a bunch of outlets. Moving over here to the side, that's all great to have back there. Some bed lights, and we also have two cameras up here. One for a rear view mirror, which Cybertruck should have, and one so you can see the camera of stuff that is back here in the bed, which is highly useful. If you're hauling something and you're like, did I get that strap down right? Boom, pull up the camera and you can easily see it. So let's roll this back. Yeah, this definitely does not feel that premium to me whatsoever. And yeah, just not the greatest design there. But moving on down the passenger side here, rear taillight, everything looking great in here. Zero complaints. Bumper to taillight, man, look at them tolerances. That's what I like to see. Whole bumper moving on here. This is all looking fantastic down here. Same as the other side. Look at the tolerance there. Love it. Really, really love it. Awesome. So I did see one area while I was just quickly cleaning this up that didn't ideally fit. This little kind of spoiler piece that runs around. You can see it's pretty tight here, opens up here, and it definitely sticks up over this piece here. I would say that just needs to come down a little bit. Not sure if it's just loose, not clipped in all the way, what that is, but on this side, that's really one of the only things that I really pointed out that I could really see. Now this gap here definitely looks a little bit large compared to here. So let's take a quick little measurement. 3.5 millimeters. And that's about 5 up there. So slightly off, but honestly to the eye, it looks perfectly normal and even. Continuing on, let's go to the B-pillar section. B-pillar section, hello. This is looking great here. No complaints from me. Doors fit amazing. Doors fit amazing. So, wow, exterior fit and finish. Impressive here, Chevy. Very impressive. I will say the only two areas that need, slight bit of work, front trunk area, rear tailgate. Other than that, I'm not seeing anything that is like glaringly terrible. I mean, at least we don't have panels touching other panels. That's exactly what we want to have on a $100,000 truck. But man, this is looking pretty darn good. So next, I think we move into the interior. Now, the interior. So I have to be totally honest, I may be a little biased here, but I personally don't feel like GM makes some of the nicest interiors out there. Now again, this has a brother, the Sierra Denali EV, whatever it is. It feels so much nicer, way more premium, way more luxurious than the RST here. I personally think the interior for me is the area that the truck really kind of falls apart a little bit. The plastics in here, very plasticky. The truck just looks bland. I don't know if that's the best word to describe it. It just, okay, you have a lot of, you know, screen here, some gloss black in here. You have some interesting stitching. It just looks kind of basic. I don't know. To me, like, it doesn't look like this is more than, honestly, a base model truck with some stitching, in all honesty. Yeah, I'm anxious to play around with some of like the work trim trucks and see like how those feel compared to this. I know we've had some on test. I haven't played with them at all. But yeah, I mean, to me, it just feels meh. Okay, I guess. So let's get in here. Let's start looking up here. So this is a very interesting plastic. This is a hard plastic. It looks soft touch, but it kind of has this cool feel to it and kind of impression in it. I like this a lot better than stuff like this down here. This is always the plastic on the bottom parts of GM vehicles that I really dislike. And again, we've had multiple of them in my family with these trucks. They always get scratched up. They just look very cheap. Okay, on one hand, I understand this needs to be a utilitarian vehicle. You can throw dogs in, you can throw your family in, you can get in with 30 work boots and whatever it may be. But in all honesty, you go to something like a Rivian and the interior is such high quality compared to this. I even think Cybertruck interior feels a lot more premium than this. Yes, it's more minimalistic, but the plastics in there are not really that many plastics. Like areas like this are all wrapped in kind of a vegan leather. And this leather to me just feels cheap. That's the only way to describe it. So you do have this little RST kind of embossment here. I think that looks nice. I'm actually surprised how much I like this material up here. Even though this is a hard plastic and it's kind of annoying if you set your arm up here, it doesn't feel super cheap. I'd prefer they use something like this all the way down here. Coming in here to the handles, feel very traditional GM, nice clicky buttons, nice automatic windows here. All is fine. I will just say, like, some of these plastics is where you really feel like, okay, I'm spending $96,000 on this truck. I need a little bit more. And that's just my opinion. You may totally disagree with me. Chevy all the way. But my opinion for a $100,000 truck needs to be a little bit nicer. Just looking here at the stitching, it's completely uneven throughout. You can see it's like very wavy as you go all the way down there. And that's just like, okay, I get you added that, but seriously, look at this door panel. It is about as bland as they come. And I see this all the time with Chevy vehicles. And honestly, one of the reasons I'm not really drawn to them, in all honesty. You have a little piano black here. I'm glad to see that didn't carry over up here where you're actually grabbing and using handles. That's in a totally fine area. This one has a Bose system in it. It seemed to be pretty decent. Wasn't anything to write home about. I would say Cybertruck has a way better sound system in it, but yeah, nonetheless. Now down here, you have lots of storage space, throw drinks in. We'll say these cup holders are a little small, so if you have wifey with Stanleys, those aren't going to be fitting in there. But yeah, pretty usable space. Again, just how you can move all of this to me, ugh. I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking way too much here, but I really just don't like the feel of that. You know, looking at things like the stitching here on the dash, I mean, that looks like somebody had their eyes closed for a second or was talking to somebody while they were doing that. It's so wavy. And when you're going to do contrast stitching like that, it needs to be perfect. And this, yeah, really. I mean, holy cow, it is so far off, it's not even funny. So don't love that. Up here, we have that same trim that I liked over here. I think this works very well. I think this is nice because this will clean up easy. It's not going to show scratches as easy as areas like this down here. And also gives a pretty darn nice texture to the interior. Now, basically, the entire shelf here is quite large, to say the least. I will point out, look at how this heads-up display is fitting in there. Really tight tolerances and sticking up there. That thing feels very plasticky. Not that you're touching it, but it just feels a little weird. Also looking here at the speaker grill. Is that supposed to be like that? Huh, I don't know. That's all hard plastic here. This is all hard plastic, of course, as well. Your air vents, okay, kind of interesting design here with this little red accent gloss black that is, yeah, completely covered in dust. Okay, not the end of the world. Moving down here to the seat area, getting in here. cheap plastic everywhere. Cheap plastic absolutely everywhere on the bottom half of this truck. And honestly, that really drives me nuts. When you can go get a Cybertruck and all of that is wrapped in this vegan leather, soft touch, it feels so much more premium, and it actually wears a lot better than this stuff. You can see every single time you kick this stuff, it'll leave scuff marks in it. I really don't like this material. And you can tell, I mean, look at how terrible these carpets are. These do not belong in a $100,000 truck. These are like the same carpet material that I just did on the Equinox EV that starts at like 30,000 bucks. This is a $100,000 truck, needs to be a little bit more premium. Seats here, pretty bland to say the least. I mean, there is zero bolstering on the side, made for big comfy road trips. I will say the seats are actually pretty comfy. Heated, ventilated seats, I believe, in this particular one. I'll have to check that when we go over there, talk about screens. You have some cubbies down here. Look at the plastic here. Gosh, look at this. Okay, well, I just fixed that, so you're welcome, Chevy. That looked pretty bad. Yeah, nothing to write home. Everything down is just like the cheapest plastics you can have ever. Like this, it just doesn't feel nice whatsoever. The top half, definitely better, but I will tell you, if you go into Sierra Denali, so much better. Everything is really so much better. You do still have some of these hard textured plastics, but I think the top half of the vehicle kind of justifies it and makes it feel a little better. Now, interesting thing going on here, you have this kind of sub glove box area with some interesting dividers in it. Why did they not put a wireless phone heater in here? That would have been great for right there. I think that'd be cool. You can, of course, you know, grab a cable, put your phone in here. I think that'd be totally fine. Glove box here, pretty small actually. Look at how cheap that feels. GM plastics. GM plastics are just, I don't know. To me, they don't belong in a $100,000 truck. It's crazy. Again, I can't get over the stitching here, how wavy all of this is. Doesn't look that great, but let me hop over into the driver's side. Let's talk about the steering wheel, both of the screens, because there's some more improvements over there that I think is pretty darn good actually here. In all honesty, I think this is where things get quite a bit better, and that is the driver's seat. You have pretty amazing screens here actually, and I'm very much torn between this and Sierra EV, which one I like better. Sierra EV has a screen that goes this way, also has the same central display with basically the GM overlays of everything. But honestly, I think this looks pretty darn nice. The interesting thing though is this may slightly be bigger, but it's the same layout and everything as Equinox EV, which is like a $30,000 vehicle. So some interesting things there. I still think it fits the truck, very usable. There's lots of actual buttons in here, which is great. So let's first start off here with steering wheel. Honestly, steering wheel feels pretty darn nice to me. Has very nice leather on here. I wish they would translate this over to the seats. The seats just kind of don't really feel that comfy. To me, they're a little hard, almost need to be broken in, but there is no support in this truck. It's basically like just a slab of a seat to sit in. So I will say not the most comfy seat I've been in. I much prefer Rivians, much prefer Cybertrucks, and F-150 has great seats as well. But steering wheel here actually feels pretty darn good to me. You of course have Super Cruise up here. Now, one thing I will say with this, if you live in a cold climate, this is absolutely freezing if you like to do one of these. When you get into the truck in the morning, I just got into this earlier today and it was like 30 degrees outside, 30 or 40 degrees. Put your hand on here and it's very chilly. So that's a slight negative. It does take up quite a bit of that. May be uncomfortable for some people. I'm not the largest fan of it, to be honest. I like everything else on the steering wheel. Back here, you have volume controls on the back of the steering wheel. Nice and clicky, exactly where you'd want them. And they keep them off of the face for things that are easy to use and move. Over here, we have our regen paddle, which is pretty interesting. This thing has about the most regen out of any electric vehicle I've driven. It is truly insane how much regen they get out of this massive truck. And truly, one pedal driving is almost in high mode, slightly too aggressive, and you kind of have to get used to it. Otherwise, you're very much doing the whole whiskey throttle thing, if you will, like bam, 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 bam. So that's a little interesting. But steering wheel controls here are fantastic. I can change my display up here if I get off of this mode, whatever it is. Boom, can change that, get all sorts of different information. You can even get your maps over here, which I think is fantastic. Now, one thing people are very much going to complain about in here, no Apple CarPlay, but there are some great things. Built-in Spotify, built-in Waze, so you can open that up, a better route planner, things like that. I would arguably say this is a better implementation than CarPlay. I'm not a huge CarPlay guy. To me, it's just an excuse for companies to not really spend a ton of time going through all of this. But I gotta say, to me, this feels pretty darn nice. Now, the biggest thing, of course, if you're an Apple user, you don't have Apple Music in here. So I do understand that could be quite a bit of an annoyance. Now, here on the screen, let's go here. These are all out of order of what I would have. But if you go into maps, you can have maps here, you can have maps there. The great thing here is this is built in Google and actually has pretty impressive route planning. So if I click this, we're gonna pop up our Las Vegas. Gotta say, this software in here is pretty darn snappy. Now we're inside, we don't have amazing service, but let's see, boom, all the way to Vegas there. So I think this is showing us 4 stops with 27-minute charge, 20-minute charge, 23, 35. Not too bad. So this is great here that you can set your preferred arrival here. Looks like only up to 50%, which is pretty interesting, but that's pretty cool. In here, you can go in, see all of your charging stops. You can see the only one gripe I would have here, and I don't know if you can change this, is your state of charge arrival. I'd like to see that a little bit lower, but honestly, this thing charges like such a beast. I don't know if it truly matters all that much. So really actually like the implementation of the maps in here. I think that's really great. Now, I will say up here, you have your volume knob. For me, it's a little out of place up here, especially because I have volume here. Like, this is so close together. What do you do for your passenger? So if the passenger wants to turn down the volume, turn it up, whatever, they have to come all the way over here and grab this. Now, I will say, I love that you have some little animations in here. Feels very clicky, feels very nice, feels a part of the screen, but it's off of the screen. So I think that's great. You can do that. You're not having to adjust volume here on the screen or anything like that. Now, you see we have 2 vents down here. This is a huge problem for me, and let me explain. So you can see this red line that goes all the way through. If you're like my wife, you like to have your air blowing way up at the sky because you don't like it at your face. And if you're like me, I would have it about here, and that doesn't line up. That would absolutely drive me nuts. So I would force it to always be back like that. But small complaint there. It's just one of those things that kind of annoys me. Now down here, we do have some physical controls for AC, which is pretty awesome. These feel very nice and clicky throughout. Love that you can have these illuminated. The interesting thing, I guess, on Blazer or Equinox, I don't remember. I've done too many videos today at this point. This was actually your fan speed, but I think because this is dual climate control here, you don't have this as your fan speed. Instead, it's here. So that's nice and easy to go up or down on. I think that's all fine, on or off, but honestly, very minimalist on the amount of buttons you use. But I think a lot of people will find this a good compromise instead of having everything here on the screen. You do have heated and cooled seats here. Going to cooled seats, you cannot have them both on. I know that's a thing with the Germans. Why it's a thing, I don't know, but Kyle absolutely loves it. Up here, you have a little screen on and off, I believe, and you can actually mute it. I thought that was to turn it off. Okay, interesting, nonetheless. I will say, software here, to me, extremely snappy. I just like to include this in part of the build quality video, give you my opinions on this. I actually think it's pretty darn adequate here. It works very well. It's very snappy. Everything's laid out reasonably well. Of course, you can kind of, I would assume, move these things around and have exactly this set up how you want. So that seems pretty darn nice to me. Other areas here, 2 large cup holders in this particular area. And I think, yes, these actually do slide back, which is pretty interesting. You guys can't necessarily see it here, but a huge amount of space down here to store a bunch of stuff. So man, I actually really do appreciate that. That's nice that you can just, boom, have a bunch of stuff under here. Never know what you're going to have in some of these glove boxes in these big trucks. It is America here for sure. So in here, we have a wireless phone heater, 2 Type-C ports here. I think they're in a very nice spot. They're out of the way. Cable management's there. Very good. Slide that back. Man, I actually really like that. Now the armrest here, this actually feels pretty darn nice. Have our stitching in here. This looks a lot better than the dash stitching over here, so glad to see that. How do you, oh, just open that up. So deep cavernous space in there. 1 Type-C port. One thing I do love is having cup holders back here. This is something our Kia EV9 has, and I actually really love having cup holders here. So you have water, you go with a wife to Starbucks or whatever, grab lunch. You have all these drinks in here, but you want to have both of them accessible to you. It's nice to have them here and here as well. So I would say the driver's seat up here, I actually very much like and appreciate quite a bit. It feels like a nice space. I would say the passenger side, start feeling some more of these cheap feeling materials in it, but in all honesty, I think this is great. This again, your heads up display up here, very plasticky. I know you're not going to touch that, but just looking at it, it looks like this huge bulge that sticks out of the dash there. The heads-up display is actually pretty impressive with the amount of content you can put up there, so I do like that. But yeah, honestly, lots of tech in here. I think it's a relatively easy truck for people who are not EV enthusiasts to get in and just go. So we're charged up, I think, to 82% right now, and it's showing 366 miles of range. This thing is truly an EV king, to say the least. Now up here, we of course have the GM mirror that uses the cameras in back. I think those are fantastic. I really wish Cybertruck would have this. I even wish Rivian. I think this is such a nice thing to have. We have it in the EV9. I keep it on this all the time. Really cuts down on glare, especially at night. You have headlights coming back at you, so I think that's impressive. Massive sun blockers here, and you can see these have kind of the old style incandescent lights. Those look pretty cheap and plasticky nonetheless. Cameras. So I do want to look on here. How do we pull up our camera? Boom, right there. 360 cam on this is actually pretty good. You can see my little boy Oliver over there doing whatever he's doing. You have some really, really nice movements throughout here. So you can, even go back, see the bed like I was talking about. Oh, so that's just in the cargo menu. See your sides. These are pretty potato-y, but the interesting thing is how nice you can actually see the truck. It's great for pulling into spaces, but you can see how bad the distortion here is on the side. But it's really interesting because front cam is great. Let's see here. Where's the back one? Okay, here's the back one, standard, and honestly pretty good. Definitely a little bit fish-eyed, as you can see the Twizy back here. I wouldn't ever so slightly complain that it does look pretty bad, in all honesty. So maybe a little bit over enthusiastic about the cameras here. I think they work great. The 360 is awesome, but yeah, definitely some of these side ones, like, what are you actually seeing there? I don't even know what I'm really looking at. It's very distortion. It's very grainy, doesn't look all that high quality. So next step, let's move into the back seat, because there's a lot of great things about the rear end. I did want to quickly insert this over here on the driver's side, show you a few more controls you have here. You have memory seats here, which is great. Of course, you can control all of the windows. Do apologize for all the GM beeps and bongs. I cannot for the life of me figure out how to turn them off right now. Down here, park brake. This is for your ride height control. So you can see it changes that up there on the screen. Lane keep assist, can move the front trunk open, you can drop the rear tailgate. This is your trailer brake controller. These actually work pretty fantastic. Telescoping steering wheel here, so that's all good. Okay, now moving to the back. Now, that is in my driving position, and the space back here is absolutely bonkers. Now, again, I will say one of the issues here though, like just looking at the seats, they look very cheap for a $100,000 vehicle to me. Very cheap. There is no storage underneath the floor. I'll quickly explain why here in a second, but let's quickly run through this. So I'm going to jump up here. Dang, it's a big boy truck. Look at the freaking space I have. That is genuinely, has to be 6, 7, 8 inches of space. Of course, up here we have the big panel roof. It actually feels like a pretty nice place to sit. I could definitely sit back here for quite a while. Here we have heated seats, some air vents. Let's see. Yep, they do the same darn thing there. I believe, yep, 2 Type-C ports, and I think you have a 110 outlet here. Oh, no, I can't hold it up and show you at the same time. Yes, you do have a 110 outlet there. So that feels good. You have grab handles here. The weird thing to me is you don't have grab handles up here, which is where you kind of would want them as well. I would say that'd probably go into your headroom space, but it's nice to have something here for, you know, doing some fun in your big 8,000-pound electric pickup truck going around a corner quite quickly. Kind of nice to hold on there. So little sad that it doesn't have it, but the space back here for the second row passengers, I mean, you can just lounge back here. So really, really like that. I will just say it's like pretty bland back here. I don't know. I just genuinely, I expect a little bit more for a $100,000 truck, but headroom's great back here. Everything's pretty great. Definitely, bam, got to jump out of this darn thing. Now, the interesting thing here, this plastic is now the same plastic that's down here. Why is this not in the second row that we had on the front panels? Yikes. Yeah, all feels terrible. Really, really bad plastics in there. Okay, you have more stitching here, and yeah, it's about as straight as, I don't know, but it's definitely not straight. You know, this has your kind of leather wrapped material here. Feels okay, doesn't feel anything special. This is actually, I'd be shocked if this is leather. Is this actual leather? To me, when you can press your finger in like this and it doesn't get a bunch of wrinkles around it, means that it's vinyl. Now, I'm totally okay with that because I think vinyl synthetic materials actually wear a lot better than natural leather. So I do think that's a good thing. Now, one of the biggest negatives though that I have with this truck is you have no space underneath here. So if I flip this up and pull this, hello, stuff falling all over. But you can see this is all usable space that Chevy has decided that if you want the Midgate to fold down, you don't get any space back here. That's one of the things I actually really love about the Cybertruck is that you can fold the seats up, and I believe F-150 you can do the same. And the space back here is fantastic for tools, hauling stuff inside, hauling dogs, things like that. So this to me is an interesting compromise. And I would say realistically, I don't really care about the Midgate going down. Now, I do want to see if I can do this by myself. I forget how this goes. No, I am not going to be able to do this. So let me grab a tripod because you have to pull this at the same time that you pull this down. But we'll show you how this Midgate goes down quickly. So let's start over here and show you kind of how this works. So you pull this, then you pull this side piece and you fold this down. Now, while doing that, you have to fold the headrest, and now this all folds down. But still, I would arguably say this is not the most usable space. I guess you could throw some stuff on top of here. I'm just not really sure why you would. Again, I think this is really interesting how they've done this. So then you pull both of these. I don't think I'm going to be able to do this on camera either. So I'm going to have to get on that side, and you can see this little tab here, basically you do to be able to pull the glass out. Then the glass sits into here, and then this whole piece folds down. It's a complicated process. I'm surprised that this is standard and not an option. I'd like to see this as an option, make something to where the seats fold up so that you can actually use this space a little bit more usable. I'll be anxious to see if a lot of people actually end up using this. Okay, so I got the piece of glass out. I could not get it to fit back in here for whatever reason, but normally it slides in here. So your next steps here, take your seat belts, put it in this predefined hole, and then you press this button here, and this entire thing folds down. Okay, so it's pretty cool, I would say, but I think there's too many compromises here, in my opinion. I guess, you know, for folks who do haul a lot of stuff, this is fantastic real estate to have. I think these are going to be incredible with basically the covers over the back so that you can really make this like a Suburban that you can actually haul stuff with. Can't wait till we have a Suburban of basically this and you have a third row, big rear trunk. But okay, that's pretty cool. I would say the biggest issue I have with this Midgate, one, it's a little complicated to use. I'm curious to see how many people are going to do this. I just showed you somebody with one hand by themselves can easily do this. It's a few steps to do. You have to move the seats around. Like, yeah, definitely not ideal. The other issue is that having this area open with weather stripping and seals around it has definitely made a little bit more road noise. Now, we had the Sierra EV, like I talked about, that we borrowed from our friends over at Loveland GMC, I think it was. And our truck was really, really, really loud in the back seat. So much so that we're sitting in the back trying to have a conversation in the front, and it's like, I can't talk between the two. But when you're up front, it's really nice. But back here, lots of wind noise, lots of road noise. This particular truck seems to be more sealed. So yeah, I think there's going to be some issues with that. Now, to do all of this, oh my God, holy cow, that is so heavy. And put it back. Oh, I grabbed the seat with that too. I don't think that was supposed to happen. Okay, let me put this back down. I think this all got sealed up. Now, we also did have a tricky situation where this basically wouldn't fully close and it wouldn't let the truck go and drive. So again, I just think a little too much compromise here. So you want to slam this. Boom. Okay, I think we're in. So I'll get the glass in, but that's the Midgate. Just seems very complex and a lot of things to go wrong. I mean, okay, it's cool that they have that. Does every truck need this? No, I really think this should be an option. Maybe it's something that they kind of have to do this. But yeah, I think a lot of people are going to never use this and you're going to have some increased wind noise and arguably some very expensive parts that could break. Final thoughts here on the Silverado EV RST. Honestly, pretty impressed with at least the exterior fit and finish. I think they did a very nice job with this truck, making it very uniquely styled. I mean, I do think Sierra EV looks slightly better, but there's something very cool about this truck, and I definitely think it stands out. I'm excited to see them in more colors other than just black and the work truck white. I'm excited to see some like blues and reds on these things, and I don't know, even white on an RST I think will be pretty sharp looking. So exterior fit and finish, pretty darn good. Other than front trunk area and rear tailgate, some slight small tolerance issues there. I wouldn't say anybody's truly gonna care. The rest of the truck, I mean, everything feels beefy, feels heavy. You know, getting in and out of it feels very premium. These door handles are great. Big, heavy weighted doors, bam, as that slams. Really impressed with that. I truly think though, and I'm gonna probably say this forever with all Chevys, really the biggest disappointment for me is the interior. They make some very interesting vehicles, but if you really want a nice interior, you just have to go to GMC. So for me, I don't remember if it's a $5,000 difference to the Denali, but whatever it is, it's worth it. You also get crab walk in the Denali, which is the coolest, best, funnest thing ever. And the interior is way more premium feeling. So for me, the interior's pretty huge letdown on this truck, in all honesty. The plastics in here, really bad. The stitching they've tried to do, really bad. And yeah, like a lot of the truck just feels very bland inside. I think the redeeming factor is the driver's seat feels nice. The screens are really, really high quality in here. Very snappy software. It's not to say they're not going to have software issues. These are going to get OTA updates, so that's great. I personally don't miss this not having Apple CarPlay. I'm not a huge fan of it in the first place. I have two cars that are Apple CarPlay pretty much all day long because they have terrible software, but this has pretty darn good software. So I'm pretty impressed with that. I absolutely love the space in the second row. I just wish that you could get this without the midgate because I think it'd be so much better without it. I think they compromised way too much on something that 0.00001% of people are actually going to use. Is it handy while hauling? Absolutely yes. But arguably, you could just hook up a small trailer and haul all your stuff like that and still have plenty of range because this has a huge battery pack. So I'm really not sure it was worth that compromise. Sierra EV is the exact same way. I'd like to see a non-midgate folding truck. I think it would be far more usable. So where this sits, I mean, honestly, I think the biggest shock to me is that, you know, Rivian R1T dual motor max pack is more expensive than this, and this has a lot more content. Now, you have Rivian's incredible software, amazing motor setup in this. So yeah, there's definitely some pros and cons, but this just feels like such a more substantial vehicle. But then if you're really into premium features, I'd say the Rivian, especially on the interior side, really kind of knocks it out of the park compared to this, in all honesty. So those are my final thoughts and feelings on the Sierra EV RST. What do you guys think? Is this really worth $96,000? On one hand, I feel like it's a bargain. On the other hand, some of the things need to be a little bit nicer, but I don't know. I can't even imagine what this battery pack costs. I know it weighs a whole heck of a lot, so I'm anxious to see more of these out on the road. I think they're badass. I think they're cool, but yeah, definitely needs a little bit nicer interior. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one soon. Bye-bye.